WV Uncommon Place. This podcast is a variety podcast that houses numerous series to cover mental health, empowerment, podcast framework, and various intimate theories to get to know the hosts, along with occasional movies reviews and dives in pop culture with our event podcast episode. The Uncommon Place digs into bringing guests on that stories don't fit the mold and are very different. WV stands for the great state of West Virginia, and every quarter we cover something in West Virginia. Stacey and myself, JR, are your hosts, so please come along for this venture to our Uncommon Place.
Howdy, everybody. My name is J.R. Sparrow. One thing I'm going to have to do in the near future is I'm going to have to get that intro a little bit shorter, and I'm going to have to get a little bit more on point or concise. Concise is the word I should use. Now, here's the deal. This is the first episode, January 13th of the new year. This is the first recording I have done. So we had to get the equipment all together and get everything going. I'm actually not at home right now. I'm actually in a hotel room. I am in Knoxville, Tennessee. And I know I shouldn't give all that location away, but nobody will hear this at least for a week or two to know you won't be able to find me in Knoxville. Now, we have someone important with us on this show today. This lady we have with us, she has a wealth. And the wealth that she has with her is something that I personally, once I was told about everything about this lady and told about her childhood, is her childhood is a key part of this story. I got really hooked on it, and she has a book series, so that's one thing I've already named out there for you there. And the lady that is on the show with me today, her name is Lee Woodman. Now, Lee, would you mind please taking the floor, letting the audience know who you are, why you are here, and then something special. This is something new I want to do just with you. I want to know something, a parable or a lesson you learned from a grandparent.
From a grandparent, I love that question because I've heard another show that you did about grandparents. It was wonderful. A lesson I learned from a grandparent, well, I think of my mother's mother, and we called her Lala. And she was just a ball of wire. You know, she came to visit us in India when she was in her 80s. She went on outboard canoe, visiting Hawaii. She just, I think gave me the risk-taking gene.
Okay. Now, tell us a little bit about who you are, why you're here, because I thank you for answering that first question. And you mentioned India, but you didn't mention France. And France would be something that I really am intrigued about in your lifetime. So please tell us about your upbringing. Tell us about mom and dad and how you were shaped and made and molded to who you are today.
Thank you for asking. Well, my father was in World War II. He was in the invasion of Normandy, and so he got to know France quite well and stayed for a year afterwards to help with building up the country. And so he was always a Francophile, and he was asked to teach at the University of Strasbourg. He was one of the first Fulbright professors there. But it was during a time when Strasbourg was in the middle of strikes and greves. And so my mother and my older sister and I, age 2 and 4, stayed in Paris. So French was really my first language, and we all just fell in love with France, even though we were very young. I was 2 years old. And when I was 4, my father was offered a job by the State Department to go to Chennai, which we used to call Madras when we went there, as a State Department consultant, as a cultural attaché, not a consultant, a cultural attaché. So we went. My mom was 7 or 8 months pregnant, and everybody would say, how can you get on a plane and go to India and have a baby? Well, the airplanes were much more lenient then. And she said, well, I think there's been a lot of babies born in India. So off we went. And so we were there for a number of years. And then we moved to New Delhi, the capital, where my dad worked for the Ford Foundation as an educational consultant between India and America. And so I was in India between 4 and 14. And although American didn't come back to America until I was a sophomore in high school. So everything about India, yeah, the language, the colors, the haves, the have-nots, the smells, the music, just left an enormous impression on my whole family, really.
All right. So my next question digs a little bit out of the ordinary. Coming to America, because technically you weren't American by standard. Your lineage is American, but you were a foreign baby.
I was a complete stranger. I
So,
had no idea what it meant to be American. And everything was different. The schools I had been to in India, um, a Catholic elementary school in Madras, and then a British day school, and then an international school in New Delhi. And the things we studied and the teachers and the different nationality kids who were our friends was what I knew.
okay, so it gave you a vast knowledge of the world while you were there. And then coming to America, you see America, you probably seen a lot of misappropriation of the things you learned over there when you came here. Like you're like, whoa, this isn't right. This is not what I read in books. This is not what I seen on TV. Or if you didn't watch TV, what you heard on the radio, correct?
There was no TV when we were in India from 52 to 62. No India in domestic places. There were some, in high level commercial places, but we listened to the radio a lot, and we especially listened to Voice of America on from Sri Lanka, um, which was Radio Ceylon at the time. And we loved, that was one thing we loved about America and being American was the music. Chubby Checker, Elvis Presley. We
Okay.
thought that was too cool for school.
Now you're there. You learn about some things when you're there. You learn about color, culture, and spirituality early on, being in France and Italy. I mean India, not Italy. Sorry for that. And when you're doing that, can you tell me a moment while you were over there before you came to the United States that like resonated with you being amongst all this culture?
Oh, yeah. Well, it was home for us, so that was everything was normal, but it's interesting you asked the question about spirituality. Um, India has very, very different religions than we knew in the States. My father was a Baptist growing up.
Oh,
But when we went to India, there were no, matching churches or anything. And they just thought it was an educational opportunity. And they took us to temples, to mosques, to street parades, to all different kinds of art galleries and museums, although they were very, very different than the ones that we came to see in the States, and very, very different from the ones in France, although I was pretty much too young to be going to a museum in France at that time. I went back to go to college there. So
okay.
yeah. But I think we used to ride our bicycles and walk in the bazaars, and there would be mounds of colorful spices and, fruits and vegetables that just didn't exist when we came back to the States. I mean, now they do. Now people know what a mango is, or a kiwi is, or a papaya is, but those were very unusual to be available in the States during the 50s and 60s. So We certainly tasted different kinds of food, a lot of rice, a lot of lentils, a lot of curry. And, as I say, we went to very, very different landscapes, very, very hot in Madras and New Delhi. We were very near the beach in Madras, and we just loved going to the ocean because there was mica in the water and it just
Ah,
shimmered like silver, just shimmering, shimmering. And we used to go at night and just watch and go in the water, and that was magical. And then New Delhi was hot, hot, hot. And in the summer, when my father had some vacation time, we would go up north. To Kashmir and to the Himalayas, to the Gulmarg, which was way north. And my sister actually went to a missionary boarding school there.
okay. Now, I noticed that you were talking about colors, and colors will be something that we're going to get into just a moment. They actually lead into a lot of what you've done and what you're doing now. Um, when did you realize that colors were more visual for you and had a deeper emotional pull?
Ah, such a great question. Well, I think really what I learned from writing this book, Colorscapes, was that everybody is interested in color. It's one of the first things that children are attracted to, and they immediately, with their reaching out for things, they have color preferences. Babies really don't see color until they are, about 2 weeks old, and then they recognize red. And then when they're about 5 months old, then they start to distinguish between different colors. But it's true with adults too. Any person you ask will say, oh, well, I have a favorite color, or I'm in an industry that depends on color choice, whether it's fashion or automobile industry or architecture. And certainly everybody in a certain business is aware of color. For instance, red is seen as a very powerful color in the United States in business. And they say, wear your red jacket or wear your red sweater, and people will listen to you.
Okay, and I can roll with that. And you made me think of this one thing in particular with me. As a kid, I remember all the colors I learned, but the color that always stuck out to me was the color orange because I could taste an orange. And when I could taste an orange, that was one thing that was a visual thing for me, obviously physical by touching it. And obviously, if I threw an orange, I heard a sound. So orange was something that resonated with me because I said it touched almost every bit of my senses. So orange is the color, even though it's not my favorite, mine's purple. Orange is something that I'm like, hey, I know what it tastes like, I know what it feels like, I know what it's like to be orange.
Well, you're talking about synesthesia because, some people see color in music. Some people taste color, like you were just saying. Some people equate words with certain colors, and that's a pretty common thing. And one of the things that you mentioned that I found so interesting in my research was we think, oh, we know there's orange, red, green, yellow, blue, but there are really families of colors and families of oranges. And for instance, green. There's so many. For instance, verdigris, olive, pine, apple green, sap, uh, laurel, kelp. Those are all specific color greens.
Okay, and I can run with that. Now, I have another question for you before we go too deep into colorscapes and all that other stuff. You're back in the United States and you're living there, and you decide to get involved. You start working. What was working like for you as an adult coming back to the United States? What companies were you involved with? What institutions kind of helped form the way you became in your middle ages of being an adult?
Okay, so I started writing when I was young, but all of the jobs I had during my career had to do with some kind of writing. And first in radio and television, and then in museum work, and then finally in poetry. But the places I worked were incredible in terms of learning things from specialists and learning about color. I was at the Smithsonian for 20 years, and
Whoa.
yeah, yeah. And, you know, it has 19 different museums, 19 different research centers, and I was able to travel as a producer with a crew and shoot in different places on different topics. And it could be anything from radar to Tiffany lamps to the Columbus crossings to um, uh, Asian painting. So that was all eye-opening and a sort of reinforcement of interest in color. And same thing with Library of Congress. You know, that it's a place where all of our books are noted and labeled and numbered, but also they have incredible exhibitions on all different kinds of topics. And so I was involved with that too.
Okay, now let's switch the topic to something you said just a moment ago. The word poetry. Now, this is going to be a weird question I'm about to ask you, but I need your definition of poetry.
Uh, well, for me, poetry is a combination of all the arts. And from the time I was a kid, I was interested and learned and did all these things, dance, theater, music, and visual art. And when I finally started writing poetry exclusively, I realized this is a combination of all the arts. It brings in language, it brings in careful observation. It brings in listening. Um, and so I would say poetry is a conglomerate of all those things in my mind.
I like that. Now, we're going to use an adjective here that you describe yourself as a rational skeptic. And another phrase, a believer in the unexplainable. How do both of these things intertwine into your world when you're writing poetry? Like when you decide that you're in the mode and means to do poetry, how do those two things intertwine?
You're asking great questions. The book before Colorscapes was called Soulscapes, and I wanted to investigate different ways of knowing other than traditional religions. And you can see where that came from because I grew up learning about Hindu gods and Greek gods, and I actually just went to Scandinavia and learned about Norse folklore.
Whoa.
And yeah. So in my research for that book, I I looked at different world creation myths. I looked at spirit animals from different countries. I looked at witchcraft. I looked at tarot. I learned about lucid dreaming and all these other ways that people learn about themselves and the world. And that's what I mean that I'm a skeptic. I don't take everything that is factual to be the end of the story. I feel like there are things beyond science and beyond regular learning and regular religious training that we can learn about.
Okay, and I appreciate that. Now, color is linked to mood and healing. And have readers ever shared moments where your poems have helped them process emotion or memory through color?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I have two short poems that I think would be of interest to you because they talk about, the first one talks about anger and the second talks about anguish. And in the Colorscapes book, there are actually color prints, and that adds another dimension. But you'll understand just by hearing the words, I think. Shades of anger, broad brushstrokes of rage are red, streaked by dark brown doomsday dread. But mine hold peaks of bluish darts emerging from black where hatred starts.
Powerful.
Anger. And this is anguish, which is a whole different emotion. My paintbrush turns tan into blurred arcs of soot, underscores grief that knots in my gut. Braided shapes tighten to clot in the center. Burnt brown loneliness groans in surrender.
Ooh, ooh, right there. That hit me right there because anguish is something that I have to deal with. Because to me, anguish, real quick though, audience, and and Lee, here's the deal. Anguish to me is something that usually is the byproduct or the result of me putting myself somewhere and getting a life lesson, not a failure, but a life lesson. And I got to figure out how to work my way around or be a part of a better part of that life lesson. I don't believe in failure. I believe in success, but I don't believe in failure. I feel like a failure is a life lesson that you have to learn. You have to embrace it. So that's why I don't believe in failure. Now, tying everything up real quick, I want to do one quick amazing thing on this show, because we have been doing this show for a very long time. We have one spot called the Shameless Plug. That's our nostalgia. You have an amazing book, and the audience needs to know where they can meet and greet you across the internet, and where the greatest place they can go to get this book from you.
Well, thank you for asking. It's very easy. I have a very detailed website. Easy. It's poetleewoodman.com. Google it, and up comes the website, has a description of each book and places that you can press where each book is sold. And most of them are on Amazon, Walmart, Barnes and Noble, Indie Press, Bookshop, Shanti Arts, which is the publisher of the last three. So there's lots of choices. But I think if people just know how to spell my name, and it's PoetleeWoodman.com, poetleewoodman.com, a lot of different interviews will come up. I have videos and reviews and audio readings on the website so people can get a taste and then buy whatever book they like.
Okay, and one other thing, audience, that I want to add in here, that you can do to help an author and immortalize their books. If you live near your state capital, and after you purchase this book from her website, take that ISBN to the state capital's library. When you do that, ask them to get that book. In most states, which I know in the great state of West Virginia, they do this still, they will purchase that book for every county in West Virginia, in Virginia, wherever you are. This immortalizes the book. And the one thing that it does for an author, it doesn't give them bestseller status or anything like that. In some cases, we've heard of companies doing that, but it immortalizes that book. So if you're in West Virginia, any of those 55 counties can have Lee Woodman's book, and it can be presented to anyone that is not able to get the book or doesn't have the means to use the internet to get the book. That all they have is a way to get to the library, or in small rural areas. We want everybody to be able to read, and we want everybody to be able to venture out. Now, one thing we need from you, Lee, we need to know 1 through 6. And can we get a description of 1 through 6, all of your books in Escape series? 1 through 6, we want to know the names of the books and just a little brief description if you don't mind.
I don't mind at all. That's fabulous. So my very first book was called Homescapes. All of them have the word scapes at the end because they're all a kind of a landscape, either literal or whimsical or artistic or colorful. And that's made a good umbrella for them. So let's see. Homescapes is about living overseas and coming back to America as a 14-year-old. Um, Lifescapes was actually about going through separation and divorce during COVID. Artscapes is about being inspired by art, dance, music, and theater, and writing poems inspired by those. Soulscapes, as I told you, is about a different way of understanding the world outside of traditional religions. And then Colorscapes, I did research on 3 things that went into the Colorscape books. One was, what are colors made of? Originally shells, rocks, stones, mud. And then during the Industrial Revolution, chemicals, and alchemists used to add different emulsifiers and chemicals to result in new colors. And then artists have forever been searching for the perfect yellow or the perfect blue. So there's a section about artists and poems about artists. And then the last thing you've already talked about is the psychology of color, the emotion, the way people choose how to design their homes, what to wear, doctors and psychiatrists, what kind of colors will make their patients feel the most calm. And so those are the 6 books.
Okay, and I really really appreciate that. Now, before we get off here, Lee Woodman, I need you to understand this, and this is a testament to you. Being vivid, being bright, being a person that has honed your skills. And when I'm talking about skills, I'm talking about your personal skills inside your mind and everything around you. You saw color, you felt color, you moved color. Color became a part of your life. You knew how to take color and make it a transition across every part of your life. And I want to thank you for that. A lot of people will understand that when they read your books. They will go further and deeper into life, and they will have a better understanding of who they are, and they will know why the color that means the most to them means the most to them through your books. So thank you there.
That's
Next.
so sweet. But what about purple? Would you like to hear your favorite color?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. I actually pulled purple out because it shows not only all the different family of purples, but how people have used it as in compliments, in insults, in bravery, and so forth. So this is for you, JR.
Okay.
Purple passion persists. It pisses God off if you don't notice purple. It's a sin not to appreciate beauty in the field. So says Shug Avery in the film Color Purple. She's thinking of blooms, salvia, sweet pea, alyssum, and petunias, or the brightly colored heliotrope flower. Eye-catching, ear-popping, metaphor insinuating, purple rain, purple people eater, light in the loafers, lavender, purple rage, purple prose, purple hat ladies, purple haze, the purple rose of Cairo. Clothiers, chemists, and artists search for special purples, dear and deeply hidden, some from above the ground, some from below. Like from the earth, a plant, a duet of algae and fungi is ground up to make our shield, a red-purple dye, worn in wool and silk capes. Another purple, Tyrian, was made from sea snails, result in an even deeper color of royalty, which nobles bought for eye-watering prices. Here's why. The color came from milked sea snails at 200,000 drops an ounce. A shining surprise from a very internal place. Other dyes, like aniline, formed sticky tar mixed with tin chloride and emerged lighter. It was supposed to make quinine, a quirky experiment to help cure malaria. Instead, it turned into a beloved mauve dye, which Queen Victoria favored. It matched her eyes. Color meanings alter from dark and shadowy to shining and gleaming. Painters reveled outdoors, light ricocheted over the landscapes. Impressionists mastered bluish violet tones. Monet thought the color of atmosphere was violet. Shadows didn't have to be only black or gray. The critics call these painters violetomaniacs, but Degas, Monet, Cézanne, and Pissarro persisted, using bright complementary colors as shadows. Delighting in new ways of looking, they daubed on yellow, green, and violet blue. No more black or gray. Grass went beyond green. Sky invited more than blue. And yes, the passion for violet, lavender, plum, magenta, mauve, and heliotrope rages on in clothes, in songs, in insults, in movies. Just remember what Shug Avery said. It pisses God off if you don't notice purples.
Oh my Lord, I love that. And I like to tie in the color purple. My other podcast, we cover movie reviews, my wife and I, and that is touching. Now, Lee, what I need you to leave us with before we get off the air with you is this amazing thing. I need your testament in life. I need to know what your legacy feels like and what your legacy is to you as of today.
Oh my goodness. Well, I've always been a mentor. And in my business life, I was lucky and able to hire incredible co-workers. And they still consider me a mentor, but I consider them, any one of them, someone I would work for because they would respond to big challenges, to risks, and I help them to go further than they thought they could go, and they did, and they do, and they are. So I think being a mentor to young children, to disabled people, to people from different countries who don't necessarily speak the same language. I would like my legacy to be appreciation of all senses in the world, all the five senses and even more, and language.
That is greatly appreciated. And audience, what I want you to do is I want you to get into everything that is a part of Lee Woodman. Lee Woodman earlier gave us a shameless plug. Can we get that shameless plug one more time for the listeners that came in midway? Because I do have people that literally, if they're watching the video, sometimes they'll fast forward a little bit and they'll miss something. So can we get the shameless plug one last time?
The shameless plug is my website where you can find all the information, poetleewoodman.com.
And everyone, she is a very spiritual person and she is amazing with her language. I want everybody to understand this. This is a love language to some and to a lot. And if you don't understand it, that would be the time that you should get involved with a person like Lee, because they have honed their skill and they have honed their art. That is the key thing here. The art of everything that has been involved in this conversation and everything that has been in Lee Woodman's life today, in the past, and will be in the future. So I want to thank you very much for coming on to WB Uncommonplace and the Uncommon Conversations. It has been a pleasure having you on here. And I don't believe this will be your last time on here, because there's something about you that resonates, and it resonates really well with me. Like, you put a smile on my face, and you put a smile on the audience's face when they see the video, or you'll put a smile on their face when they hear the audio, or we do got people that read a transcript, and that's wild, but I got to be able to meet everybody at their front door. The only thing I haven't done yet is write it out in Braille yet. We'll get there one day. So,
Well, let me just thank you, JR, because I've listened to a number of your shows, which I always do before I do an interview. And I think you're a very thoughtful interviewer and ask really good questions.
thank you so much. I'll take that to heart. Now, as any episode, when it ends, it's time for that outro. But the one thing I want you all to do here is make sure you get involved. All of your senses can get a sensation by dealing with Lee Woodman. So on that note, I'm JR, and she's Lee Woodman, and we are out of here.
Please follow WV Uncommonplace on Instagram, Tumblr, Twitter, TikTok, where we have some great content, Facebook, LinkedIn. Hit up the merch store at onecommonplace.square.site. Join the email list from the website, and rate, subscribe, and give feedback from your favorite podcatcher.
Thank you so much.